This episode of The Envelope is brought to you by Paramount Plus, presenting Showtime's Fellow Travelers. Do you all get hate mail like on Instagram and Twitter? Because I feel like...
Yes. So the answer is yes. We get a good amount. Like, I also get it, people on the street.
Yeah.
Like, hey, man, if Greg don't figure this out, man, I don't know what to tell him at this point.
Yeah.
It's my boy.
Yeah.
Like, to tell you the truth, one of the things that, like, I know Quentin and I enjoy the most is knowing we're going to frustrate people.
Yeah.
Like, reading is going to be like, they're going to hate this. I love this so much, and it's fun.
Welcome back to the Envelope Podcast. I'm Mark Olson, and I'm here with
Yvonne Villarreal.
Sean Finney.
And this is our first episode back since Emmy nominations happened, and we've got some really great conversations with some very exciting nominees lined up over the next couple of episodes. Today has turned out to be Comedy Day. Sean, who did you talk to?
Tyler James Williams on Abbott Elementary. We've known him since Everybody Hates Chris, even well before that, which I didn't quite understand. He's done a lot of work even before Everybody Hates Chris, voice acting, so many other different things, but got a chance to talk with him, and he's hilarious in real life. Which I always, like, with comedians, I'm like, is it just for camera, or are you actually like this? But just his entire career and what success means to him now. So we went really deep, as funny as he is. We went really deep, but also got to see his perspective on Greg and why he does what he does and the decisions that he makes. And so it really gave the character, I think, a bit more arc.
I just have to pause because it's Gregory. We say the full name in this house.
In this house, we say Gregory.
I love it.
What about you, Yvonne? Who did you speak with?
Well, I spoke with Paul W. Downs, who's the co-creator and showrunner of Hacks, alongside his wife, Lucia Agnello and Jen Stasky. And they've worked together for a long time on shows like Broad City, but he's also in Hacks. He plays Jimmy, the sort of well-meaning manager to Deborah, who's played by Jean Smart, and Ava, who's played by Hannah Einbinder. And he spends a lot of this season trying to sort of help Deborah achieve this goal of getting late night. He's branched out on his own. He's trying to make a name for himself alongside his trusty and like hilarious assistant Kayla, played by Megan Stalter. And, you know, this is the first time he's been nominated as an actor, so we talked a little bit about what that was like for him and just this season, which was really well received.
Yeah, Yvonne, I sat in when you were doing that interview, and I thought it was so interesting to hear Paul talk about the way he operates in two minds as sort of a producer brain and an actor brain when he's performing and putting the show together.
Yeah, it was fun to sort of pick his brain on sort of the arc of the season, but also just his approach to this character. He's really funny. I don't think I measured up to being as funny as him by any means, but it was fun to speak with him for sure. But Sean, we're gonna start with your interview with Tyler James Williams after the break.
I'm here with the 3-time Emmy-nominated Tyler James Williams. You know, Tyler, I'm not going to pretend like we didn't just have a whole conversation here for the camera.
It was deep. It was great.
But congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm proud of you. I'm excited for you. And I'm curious because I feel like you've been in this business for a while.
Yeah.
You're young, very young still,
Yeah.
but been in this business for a minute, right?
Yeah.
And I imagine it's never bad news when you find out you're Emmy nominated.
No.
Yeah, it's not the worst thing. Yeah, it's not the worst thing that could happen. And I'm curious for you, like, what does it mean for you with all the experience that you have now? Like, what does it mean for you now? Mm-hmm. And how has that meaning changed, if it has?
I've always wanted to earn my spot in this industry. I've always wanted to, you know, not just rest on past successes. I wanted to be able to step in front of a camera and take the privilege that is working in the time that we work in and in the position that I'm in and take that seriously. So to me, the nomination coming in just reaffirms that in a way, and that's what it does. I just wanted to kind of do good work that the people who I respect would respect. What's really nice about nomination day is there is always some aspect of like, everything's up in the air. Everyone made really good TV this year.
Yeah.
So to still have my name on that list, it immediately humbles and brings in a bunch of gratitude. A bunch of gratitude. It's never expected. It's always like this, out of everybody who was on screen this year.
Yeah.
there should be a laundry list of names that should be up there. So the fact that mine is up there is
and has been
special.
Consistently.
It's special.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
Like each time I'm like, really? Okay, great, I'll take it. But
You
that's
talked about it from like earning your spot, and it's when I think about you earning your spot personally, I think about like such a wide range of experiences. You know, film, series, voice acting, which a lot of people don't really fully understand or know.
Yeah.
The voice acting aspect. I'm curious, like, how do all those cumulative experiences like prepare you when you go into your next role? So, like, for example, to jump into Greg, like, how did that prepare you for Greg and Abbott Elementary?
Right before Abbott, the last project I did was the U.S. versus Billie Holiday.
Yeah.
With Lee and Andra.
Incredible.
We wrapped that movie and went into the pandemic. And then after the pandemic came Abbott. So it changed the way I prepped Abbott. I was prepping a biopic where there's this very high bar for you're playing a real person and you have to get their story accurate and all of that. And I think people look at network TV and go, you don't have to approach it that way. And that's what it did. I approach everything the same way. So all of those experiences, I think, led into how I learned how to prep everything. That was, I think, the most important lesson I've ever learned. Regardless of what it is, prep it as if, the person you respect the most is going to see it.
It helps you get like perspective because the prep is difficult.
Yeah.
And the prep is not always sexy. I think people think like, the prep, like, you're getting ready for film. And you're like, I have been studying this person's isms.
Yes. over and over
again just to get into this. What it takes for you to want to do something now at this point. I didn't really grow up with educators that looked like your character. I'm not sure if you did.
No, I didn't.
What was it that, coming out of that pandemic and all of that, like, that made you really be like, I really want to step into this?
One, I think the pandemic changed the game completely. It changed the way our brains worked, our emotional selves. So I wanted something that could address that in some way. Like, I knew the world wasn't healing. It needed something light in a way. So that was the first thing I was thinking about. But then it wasn't until Quinta and I got on the phone about Gregory and she brought that opportunity up. She goes, we have an opportunity here to show Black men caring for the next generation in an educational capacity in a way that has not been shown before. And that was the key in for me. I need a purpose behind what I'm doing, or else I'll end up floundering with that in character. It's just like finding what are we driving at?
Yeah. And why?
And why? What's the why? Like, especially with doing network TV where you're going to do a high volume of episodes, your purpose for going into that has to be very clear.
Take your time and be safe. We'll keep your momentum going so you don't get stuck.
You know what? A little bit of help here. Please.
All right, here you go. Okay.
Thank you. Saved my life.
'Cause I don't know about all that.
No, you did. With my height, that's the equivalent of a 2-story fall.
Okay, I guess I did save your life then.
Yeah. Pick that up from that EMT you been hanging out with?
Maybe. Is that bad?
No. Happy you learned something.
And that was it. That was enough for me. That was like, I can tell this story for 4, 5, 6 years.
Yeah.
And watch this man grow. And there was also this aspect of him becoming himself.
Yeah.
That was, he's at that age where he's expected to be in a position of authority, but isn't quite there yet and doesn't know what he's passionate about and is trying to be successful and do the right thing, but it's up in the air. And showing, I think, particularly Black men in process for me has always been a thread through my career.
Black men. Okay, I need you to just expand on that a little bit. Like, talk to me about Black men in process. And
I feel like we get a lot of times judged for where we are as if it's an end destination. That wherever the point in the story is that you found us, that's all we'll be. That's all we'll be. That's all we can grow into.
Yeah.
And that's something that's so incredibly limiting.
Yeah.
That's why it's been so important, I think, over the course to show the evolution of what we're capable of. I think Gregory starting off cold and I think closed off.
Yeah.
And then you see these moments of warmth where he chooses to not only fall in love with his job and his kids, but it's really important to me to show him fall in love with not only Janine, but the romantic aspects of it. There's like moments in the finale of season 3 where there's a stage set. It's really beautiful and romantic, and I wanted to take the time to show him appreciate that.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just something for her. It's him also falling in love with falling in love.
Yeah.
And that to me is just part of our process and our journey.
It's because I feel like season 1, it was like an introduction to the character.
Yeah.
Season 2, like you got to know them a bit more. And then 3 to me was like the complexities of the character. And so like, I'm curious, like your management of Greg's complexities, because I feel like he was also navigating, to your point, everyone's idea of success, juxtaposed to his idea of success. So I'm curious for you, like that complexity of Greg in the character.
That's what I loved most about season 3, is there were moments that he got dirty, and I love that.
Can I help you with something?
Well, it depends. All these rules are so hard and rigid.
Well, here's a rule. Put your arms away, Jeremy Allen Black. This is a school.
Please.
Because I think in a way, as somebody who is as professional as he is, and also a black man in the world, you know how to show up in a way that's safe for other people.
Yes.
Right? So that there's no issues.
non-threatening.
You can't say anything wrong. I didn't do anything. And then in season 3, you see these moments of him being jealous.
Yeah.
And you see...
I'm like, is he a stalker? What's
right,
going on?
and that's... I love that, because that's what you need to understand the complexity of him. And it's difficult. And it carries a lot of weight. I remember we shot the double date scene in the bar all night long, and I was just constantly refining it and trying to like just enough to go over the edge up for him, but not too much that he's like completely turned off. It's a difficult line to walk, but that's why I like walking it. I like doing it because it's hard, because it's gonna be a razor's edge of something that takes it too far or something that doesn't. He deserves that amount of complexity.
And the nuances. That
Right.
Because I think what's interesting is that you're right, that scene in particular, there's the things that are said that are verbal that you're like, I know exactly how he feels. He's upset he is upset at this moment. But then there's the pieces I feel like with Janine in the set where you said we as the audience are watching him appreciate it. And I feel like that's not in dialogue.
No.
That's in expression. And I'm just so curious because I feel like this show in particular is so, all the looks to the camera that everybody talks about, which you've been doing for a very long time, by the way.
Yeah.
But like, talk to me about like how you convey those emotions that are not said, because you see it at the end.
Right.
We're gonna get to the kiss later, but you see it when he walks in, that look like to the audience, and we're all like, yes, we were all waiting for you. So like, I'm curious, just talk to me about that aspect of it. And when do you know that you've conveyed that emotion? Is it something you feel? Is it on the playback? Like,
I don't watch anything. Like I don't watch episodes.
Wow.
Like to me, in order to keep it authentic, I can't be going, I'm trying to replicate this thing.
Okay.
I just have to live in the moment of what I'm feeling. But every script I get, I go through it, and I love what's on the page.
Yeah.
But that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking on what's not.
Yeah.
What's in between these lines. And a big part of that is my cast, and like getting there on the day and listening to them and what they've brought to it gives me more to play with. But I'm one of those people who, like, if my script isn't littered with notes of ideas of things to do kind of in these like in between places, then I don't feel like I'm doing my job. When we're having a conversation, you're not just waiting for your thing to say, and I'm waiting for my thing to say. You have opinions about what I'm saying as those words come out of my mouth. And that to me is, you want to make a fully fleshed out character, you have to not only know how they feel, but how they feel about what everyone else in this scene is saying.
We are going to lift up our brother Gregory Eddy in prayer.
We'll put healing hands on him.
Oh, no. But we don't need to do that.
All right, please. Everybody, bow your heads and close your eyes. Father God, we are gathered here to celebrate mothers and also to empower Gregory Eddy.
Yes, Lord.
Please, Father, watch over. What was your mother's name?
It's not necessary.
Oh, sure it is.
it's interesting because I think about speaking with the writing team, there was a little thing called a strike.
Yeah.
I imagine right in the middle of shooting season 3. So I'm curious, like, maybe including that or not including that. Like, what was the most What was the most challenging part about shooting season 3, or opportunities of growth for you or the cast? Maybe we'll frame it that way.
So right now we're prepping for season 4. There's a months of prep that kind of goes into talking about the storylines and getting yourself ready and figuring things out. Because of the strike, we couldn't do any of that. It was like, strike's over, you're back to work.
Right.
So we just kind of jumped in, and there wasn't that calibrating that usually happens at the top. And I think that was difficult for us. We all talked about it. We were like, it wasn't until we all did our first scene together that we felt like we weren't being caricatures of the character.
Oh, yes. Was it the library scene? Which scene was it?
We were in the library. We were like, okay, here we are.
Here we are. We're back.
We're back.
These people.
We're back. Because it's an ensemble.
Yeah.
We needed each other to kind of get back into that rhythm. So I think that was the most difficult part. And also we did 13 episodes instead of 22, which changes the way you tell a story. It's a lot faster. So that makes the double date episode where Gregory has this big kind of jealous moment. It would have been nicer to have that happen over 3 episodes.
Yeah.
We have to execute this in this one.
Yeah.
And that made it challenging and more difficult. But I think we just rise to the occasion whenever that happens.
No, I love that. And I think, too, it's interesting because I feel like the audience, you all play to the audience in a way that is so unique. And I'm curious, like, do you all get hate mail like on Instagram and Twitter? Because I feel like I kept thinking, like, yo, if George does not, if Greg does not come out here, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I'm curious, like, how much of that impacts, or how much of that really comes into play.
Yes. So the answer is yes. We get a good amount. Like, I also get it, people on the streets.
Yeah.
Like, hey, man, if Greg don't figure this out, man, I don't know what to tell him at this point.
Yeah.
It's my boy.
Yeah.
But, like, he got to get with it.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, to tell you the truth, one of the things that, like, I know Quentin and I enjoy the most is knowing we're going to frustrate people.
Yeah.
Like, reading is going to be like, they're going to hate this. I love this so much. And it's fun. I felt that feeling living in Gregory's skin. We shot the last scene of season 3. And it was the scene right before Gregory goes back to Janine's apartment. And Jacob is like, what are you doing? And I looked at the writers.
Jacob was all of us.
But I looked at the writers and I went, I feel like, why am I not in there? What's happening? And that was the perfect time to feel it. That's how I knew. Yeah, I'm running out of excuses. I can't justify this for him any longer.
Yeah.
That's how you know we're at the right spot.
And everybody's relief when you walked in there. But the way that you looked at the camera was like, all of us were like, okay, finally. You know what I mean? And then like the closing of the blinds.
Yeah.
But even for you both, like for Greg and Janine's character, like what do you think that moment meant? And how do you think, without giving me anything about season 4, unless you want to give an exclusive,
No.
Without giving anything about season 4, like how do you think that it might impact their future in the coming months?
To me, when I took notes on that scene, it was one of the few that actually didn't have a lot in it. And the word only had on there was enough. That's kind of what it was for them to me, is them going, all right, enough of this. Whatever we've been doing, enough of that.
Yeah.
And I think I can confidently say that they have crossed into territory that is uncharted for them. You know what I mean? That's the first time they're addressing how they feel for each other at the same time and not being afraid of what happens next. Now we have to play out what happens next, which may not be as linear as I think everyone expects it to be. But that was what I remember, we talked about it for 2 or 3 weeks beforehand. Just what does it need to look like? What does it need to feel like? This has to feel different from the first kiss, because that felt kind of tentative, and this should feel like a defining moment. But that was it. The goal was to just put a period on that phase of their life and just say enough of the hemming and hawing. We're walking forward either way.
I also really appreciated the pairings. I feel like mentioning Jacob coming back and being like, yo, and I feel like, correct me wrong, but I feel like we got to see Greg kind of be able to confide in Jacob, and then Jacob was kind of holding him accountable, and then Jacob's relationship, and then now Jacob's in a new relationship.
Right.
So I'm just curious for you, that synergy between Greg and Jacob.
Oh, it's one of my favorite story arcs.
Hilarious, by the way.
Chris Perfetti.
Yeah.
Anytime I am in front of a camera with that man, it is an absolute privilege. To me, season 2 was defined as the will they, won't they of Gregory and Jacob.
Yep. Yes, exactly.
Them finding each other and finding a way. Because I truly believe that Jacob is integral to Janine and Gregory working.
Yep.
If this is going to work, it's going to move forward, it's going to take Jacob to get it done.
Yeah.
And I think in a lot of ways people haven't realized that this story could be told from a lot of different perspectives. And I think there's a show in Jacob trying to make this relationship work in itself as the A story. But to me, that's one of the sweetest parts of this show is you see people who decide to be invested in each other's lives.
Yeah.
And feel a good amount of anxiety when something may not go well for the person next to them.
Yeah.
And we see people take care of each other in a way that I think we haven't seen in a while. And that's one of the more beautiful parts of this.
I mean, in the compassion, right? Where it's like, we're coworkers, but it's an interesting family dynamic now, especially we're okay, Ava,
right?
You actually do know famous people. Okay, Janine, you glowed, she glowed up.
Yes,
you
she
know
did.
What I mean? I
She
was
did.
new hair, new everything, and so I feel like you're really invested in a very honest way,
right?
And you're watching these people become family.
Hopefully it reflects what's happening or will happen in the world. You also have people from a lot of different points of view here.
Yeah.
People who are flawed and problematic. Ava's one of the more problematic characters I think we've ever seen on television.
Yeah. Sorry, she is hilarious. Yeah.
But what I love seeing is people love her and go, but she does get things done.
Yeah.
And people have different ways of doing things, but I think this show reinforces that idea that people can be different from you. You can have opinions about how they do things and what they do to get things done, but you can all still choose each other at the same time. You can choose somebody for who they are, not in spite of who they are. And that, I think we just need a little bit more of, because we're in a place right now where we're really quick to throw people away.
Yeah.
Who just don't align with how I would have gotten it done.
Or the mistake that they may have
Right.
made, and then that's not who they are forever. They're not in the process anymore.
And that's what I'm saying.
This
show shows people in process, and it reminds us that we all are, and we don't all always make the great call. And when that is the case, it's not something that, needs to be fully condemned all of the time.
Yeah.
It's just somebody in progress.
Yeah.
This is a growing moment for them.
Yeah. And I appreciate that, through humor, I believe real issues are being tackled. I'm curious for you, because the writing team, salute the writing team. The writing team
They
is
have not changed in 3 seasons.
impeccable.
Yeah.
But also the way that they encapsulate culture.
Yeah.
In a way that just is it's so authentic. Because we know when sometimes it doesn't feel authentic.
It feels forced. Yeah.
I'm curious for you, when you're reading on the paper, and you kind of alluded to it a little bit when you talked about you need a lot of notes in order to kind of really understand the development and the arc of the character. Are you ever reading it laughing out loud? Are you ever how are you actually receiving when you receive the scripts of where it's going?
There's times where it's so I know the rhythms of the show. I also know the way Quinta writes, and a lot of the writers write. So when I see somebody's name on the script, I know what I'm anticipating.
Yeah.
But every now and then, there's just something that I have to close my script and just put my head down.
We're going here.
We're going here. This is hilarious. It's and I'll send the text to whoever wrote the episode. It was this joke particularly got me.
Yeah.
It got me in a way where it even shocked me, and I think that's what's part of the beauty of it. There was one in the field trip from last year. Janine and Jacob are talking about her and Gregory, and Jacob says, a little birdie told me that Gregory still has feelings for you. And Janine responds realistic, do you have a bird that's a friend who told me that? And it was that got me. That's my kind of stupid. So the fact that I can still have those moments in this show going into season 4, we just had 2 table reads and the same thing happened.
Yeah.
The fact that we're still here means that we got legs, and I'm really grateful for that.
What's been also amazing is how you're bringing other people in, Taraji coming in so many different aspects. Tatiana. But don't even tell me. I don't want to ask about season 4 because I know you can't.
Nope.
But what was your favorite experience? And not the trip to have one, but what is the standout experience from season 3?
Tatiana Ali and I have known each other since I was 17.
Yeah. I still know her song by heart.
Oh, of course. You should. Her coming in, and same thing with Cree, Summer, who came in. You have these people who pioneered TV.
Yes.
And to me, it's kind of like watching, Braun right now is playing in the Olympics and killing it. It's like watching somebody like, yeah, you still got it. Like, it's not like you never lose it. She came in, and people a lot of times struggle when they come into our show finding the tone, because I think
it's the cadence.
What it ends up being in the edit is not how we shoot it completely. So it's like it's an adjustment. She fell right in.
Yep.
And I was like, yeah, same thing with Cree. And I was like, that's a vet. That to me, that gives me a lot. It gives me a lot to see people who executed this artistic platform perfectly.
Yeah.
And can still do it.
Yeah.
It makes it all worth it.
And it's interesting you talk about, I think about legacy.
Yes.
And the legacy of seeing culture, and specifically Black culture on television, and it was just them existing.
Right.
Like, it wasn't a caricature of anything, it was just the existence of a family and the things that we all know.
Yeah.
And then I think about the legacy of you, and you starting this very young, and I'm curious, like, now today, like, where you are, like, what would you tell you then? Because I imagine working with kids, it's not foreign. You're like, I know kind of how they're thinking,
right.
and they're now telling the other castmates like how to do this, and new people that are coming in, but you've had a lot of the same cast. Like, what would you tell, understanding a bit more of your journey, what would you say to you?
Never lose the reason why you came here. And he won't. He's not going to. That's what's great about it. Is like, I know that he won't, but on this road, people forget why. They forget the original thing, that original feeling that was like that spark. And I'm watching kids now have the spark on a daily basis. Never forget the spark, because the spark will keep you on the right path. Because I think that's ultimately, for me, my career was always the most important thing in my life. If I couldn't do the thing that I love to do, I didn't know what else there was going to be. And there's a certain amount of stakes that come with that, and responsibility that comes with that. So yeah, I think it would be that, is don't forget these days, because these days are going to be the thing that is your North Star.
I'm such an audible listener that I had to stop and be like, amen. Yeah, yes, because I wanted them to be able to hear it.
Yeah.
But no, I completely agree.
Yeah.
And we talked about this a little bit, but when I think of dreams and goals, at one point I was like, I just got to get there. I just got to get there. Like, can I just get there? Right. And then once I got to an emotional maturity, and I was like, oh, I can get there.
Right.
And then for me, I call it staying there power. And I've heard you now talk, and I've never heard anyone else say that.
Really?
And so it's so fascinating to me when you said it. I'm just curious, like, for you now, because I think it changes success, how we define success. What does staying there power mean for you right now? And it can change.
Quality. That's what it means. I'm in a position where, because of how long my career has been and the success that I've had, that I have now the ability to be, financially pretty stable. Now is not the time to just run that number up and do as much work as I possibly can for volume. Staying power is using the power that is financial stability wisely and with grace, and not chasing every dollar that gets thrown at me. But understand there's a responsibility to not only my audience, but to that little kid who wasn't doing it for that. That to me is what success looks like. If I can stand behind the projects that I do and go, I gave you everything I have on this and I feel like it's really good, that's success.
I'm proud of the culmination of what we get to see, but it's not lost on me. And I know we said this already, but I just want to make sure it's clear. It's not lost on me on what it takes to do what you do, and that we just see the final result. So thank you for just going through all of those unique and pivotal moments so that we can get to see ourselves in you.
Thank you, man. It's a beautiful thing when seen, when feeling seen. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Gotcha, bro. And we matched.
Yes,
which is kind of crazy.
I mean, we felt the energy of the day, and we're like, this is where I'm coming. It's a light day.
It's a light day. After the break, Yvonne speaks with Paul W. Downs from Hacks.
Paul, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I mean, congratulations. The show was nominated 17 Emmy nods, including Best Comedy and acting noms for Jean and Hannah and yourself. And you've been nominated before in a writer-producer role, but you've often talked about how writing was a means to get you to perform.
Yeah.
So I'm curious how you're processing being an Emmy nominee as an actor.
It's hard. It's barely sinking in. It was a shock. I was really shocked. I mean, obviously I was thrilled. Yeah, it is. It does feel different. This one hits different, you know.
How so?
It's such a competitive category. I mean, there's so many great actors in so many great shows, and there are only 6 nominees. You know, it was not something that I was anticipating. Obviously, you know, you say like, well, Jean Smart, we hope gets a nomination, and Hannah Einbinder absolutely should. But yeah, it was just one that was just unexpected. So it was cool.
And your kid is not impressed by it?
You know, we did tell him, Dad got a nomination, and he said, "Can you do this?" So I was like, "Yeah, I can do that." I also am an Emmy nominee, so I can cross my fingers. But you know, it'll sink in. It'll eventually sink in.
Well, never have I wanted Deborah to be real than in this moment. Do you think once she's in this late night circuit, that how long before she's asking Jimmy to find a way to get Anthony or Kimmel off the ticket as the next Emmys host?
Oh, that is absolutely her move. That is so her move.
That's her move?
Yeah. I mean, it's so funny because we were just talking about Kimmel today. I was in the writer's room on the way over here on a Zoom, and do you think he would do it? Do you think he'll cameo? I think he's got a sense of humor.
Yeah, he'll cameo, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but Deborah would absolutely want to host. So her thing.
Do you think she would be good at it?
Yes.
What would those jokes be like? Who would she go after?
Oh man, who wouldn't she go after? You know, there is no line. You know, in her words, there is no line. So it would be fun.
With all the fantastic things that have been happening, like what's the unexpected way that your daily life has changed with the show's success?
My dad recently brought some scrap metal to a salvage yard, and they said to him, Paul Downs. And he said, yeah, not the one from Hacks. And the woman that worked there was like, I just started watching because my father-in-law, who owns the salvage yard, loves the show. If he's ever in town, we'll give him a T-shirt. So I get a lot of perks at the metal dump, if that's something. I mean, that's one perk. But day to day, it hasn't really changed my life. No. And, you know.
People aren't stopping you?
People do stop me, and people have stopped me more and more. And that's actually something that's interesting. Like, we were traveling this summer, and it's funny the places you go that people have seen Hacks, which is really wild. Because, of course, that kind of thing has happened before with other roles I've had. But there is something about Hacks that it's really surprising the kinds of people that approach you. Because, of course, there's people who fancy themselves Deborahs, you know. There are the women of a certain age who love the show and identify with her. And then we shot in season 2, we shot in a mall. And there were like truly 8 teenage boys, probably 15-year-old boys, who were like, yo, that's Deborah Vance. And they wanted photos with Jean, and she did not get it. She was like, huh? You know the show and you know me? So it's really wild, the age range of people that watch the show and connect with it, yeah.
So I was wondering if you knew of any open writing assignments that you think would be good for me?
Yes, I have coverage from Kayla, actually.
Woo!
That I think might be interesting.
Okay, great.
Literally every studio wants a procedural based on operation. Remember that game?
Okay, what else you got?
Okay. So they've done some market research, and they found that Gen Z thinks the animated spoon from Beauty and the Beast is hot and apparently can get it. So they want something that focuses on his love life, like a spin-off, focusing on the animated spoon's love life.
Love life. All right.
Okay.
Give me another one.
No spoon. Okay.
You know, the 3rd season has been hailed as one of the best. I think I had like 3 separate threads going at any given time talking about this show.
Oh, that's so nice.
It's very good, very good. And it's a hardwire act to pull off to keep a momentum going on a TV series, especially in this climate. And with comedy, you know, you're reliant on how the audience is responding. But with a show like this, you're not filming in front of an audience, and you're filming well in advance of the season airing. Who or what do you sort of lean on for feedback to make sure this is landing the way you want to? Like, are you asking your mom or a friend?
That's so funny. I mean, sometimes because both my parents and Lucia's parents have come during the shooting to help, because we have a new kid, sometimes they'll overhear something. They'll be like, "That's funny," and we're like, "Okay, well, it's working for moms." But we really do. We also rely on our cast and crew. When the crew is laughing, or when the camera guy is shaking, and we have to redo a take because something has just really worked. That's one way. And someone like Jean has been working so prolifically and has done sitcoms in front of a live studio audience, has done drama, and has done so much that when she comes to set and is like, "I am excited for this scene," then you really know it's something. And also, we do film with a lot of background actors because so much of it is her performing stand-up. And it's funny how it's hard for them sometimes to fake laughter. So Jean really has to sell, and she can't. I mean, Jean is so good at landing a punchline, and she actually feels like a real stand-up that a lot of the times it is the laughter of those background actors that you're hearing in the show. It's not canned. It's not something we add, because that's another way you can tell if a joke worked, is because there are a lot of people on set who are asked to respond to it.
Is there a moment from this season that you were really curious how it was going to be once you saw it be performed? Were you like, is this going to work or not?
Yeah, I mean, there is a scene in the finale in Bulletproof where I go after Kayla on the plane, and I make this big overture and proposal. We knew it was going to really depend a lot on our guest actors and also our background actors, because it's so much about the people in this first-class cabin being like, "Oh," and reacting to what they think is a proposal. And it was so great to shoot it with people that were so in the scene, because it made it so much funnier. I mean, it's made it so fun for Meg and I.
I have been underestimating you. You figured out how to get Jack Danby out of the running. You figured out how to get FaceTime with Winnie Lindell. Deborah wouldn't have gotten late night without you.
Sir, you cannot be standing in the aisle.
Okay, this will just take 1 sec.
He's proposing!
No. This is just a platonic work thing.
Please take your seat. We're about to push back.
Real quick, we are a great team because you think outside the box. Yes, inside that box are skills like calendar, texting the right person back, scheduling that you do not have a handle on at all, but that's okay, because sometimes the most innovative visionaries struggle with executive functioning. You are not an assistant. You are a manager, and a great one. So please, stay here with me and be my partner.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I thought you were a man. They're gay.
What? I am a man.
But you said partner.
Leave us alone!
One of the interesting discussion points that have come out of the Emmy nominations is this idea of the tone difference between something like Hacks and something like The Bear. Do you view The Bear as a comedy?
I think that comedy is so subjective. It's so hard to say, like, what is funny to one person. I mean, for us, our show is about comedy. We're making a show about comedians and comedy writers. And so certainly our North Star is being funny first. That's like the thing for us. But, regardless of like the tones of the shows, I'm just glad to see that there are other comedies that are resonating with people, because I think there is a crisis in comedy right now. Comedy is so important for our cultural discourse, for our cultural literacy, and I feel like there are less and less being made, and less shows that have third, fourth, fifth seasons. So the fact that any show resonates, that's a comedy, it's really important, because we can't, I think that comedy is so undervalued, and it's really so important politically, and especially in a time when people need to find things to laugh about together. I think it's certainly a crisis.
I was curious what you think Deb would make of this moment, and what points she would find as talking points in a set.
You mean in this moment politically? Or in this moment? Well, I mean, I do think Deborah Vance would also share that sentiment that there isn't enough comedy going on. There isn't enough comedy in the world. But yeah, politically, I think she would have a lot to mind in terms of what's going on in this election cycle. I mean, because the truth is, I think at one point or another, Deborah might have been friends with Trump. No longer a fan. But you know what I mean? I think she probably rubbed elbows at some point. And they certainly sometimes share interior designers. Every once in a while, Deborah's a little bit. She's a little bit caffone is the word in Italian. She's a little bit gaudy. Yes, the gold. So but yeah, I think she would have a lot to say, and I think she's so fiery and so feminist that I think this would be a moment she would, I think she wouldn't hold back.
She would try getting them on the show now.
100%. Yeah. Well, at least Kamala.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if she certainly wouldn't ruffle any hair. You know, I don't think she would have that moment with Trump.
She might with Vance, though. Try to reclaim the name, because that's what people were doing when he was announced.
That's right. She would absolutely have a no relation campaign. Yeah, she'd have a no relation campaign. She's never done anything with a couch other than add a tassel or two. You know, that's the extent of her couch play. Yeah.
Well, I want to talk about Jimmy. I mean, when people think of Hollywood agents, we sort of associate it with figures, the fictional figures like Ari Gold from Entourage, where you're, you know, this ball-breaking, fast-talking, egocentric guy. Jimmy is very much not that.
Yeah.
What did you want? What were you interested in terms of who he represents in this ecosystem?
You know, I think the Ari Gold archetype is so familiar. Like we've seen the snake and the, you know, the mover and the shaker. But in my experience with my representatives, and also just, I think like the idea of an old school manager, those I think were usually people who love movies, who love TV, and loved, if they didn't have the gift of like being creative, they wanted to be a part of it. They wanted to like help platform comedians and help set up a movie and make it happen. So I think for us, we really wanted to channel this. You know, Deborah is sort of like this old school showbiz icon. And with Jimmy, we wanted to do a similar thing of this person who's really well-meaning and really cares, because there are those people, you just don't always see them, you know, and we always joke, representation for representation is important, you know? They have to see themselves. And hey, maybe it's inspiring to, you know, new management people, you know, maybe they're like, well, okay, we could have a moral compass in addition to being a mover and a shaker.
Do you think there's a chance he could evolve into a figure like Ari Gold? Like, is there a time where success just becomes too, like, it just turns people?
I think power corrupts, you know, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So you never know. I think, like, depending on how successful he gets, I mean, I guess the thing that keeps him grounded is his partner is Kayla Schaefer, and we have someone who is very outside the box. So I think they're always going to keep each other a little bit grounded. They're they have like this yin and yang thing. So I don't know if he would ever fully be Ari Gold, but I could see him cracking a little bit. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
What is your dynamic like with your own team? And are they ever worried that, are you going to use this in the show?
Every once in a while. I think they're like, don't use that, you know, but also sometimes they love being like, well, you know, there was a story in the 80s about this person. You know what I mean? They also love, I mean, I think that there's something interesting and juicy about Hollywood lore. So every once in a while we'll hear like a really fun story and we're like, that might be something to draw on.
Do you think Jimmy would represent Paul W. Downs?
Absolutely.
And what would that
yeah, he loves representing fresh, young voices, you know?
Well, let's talk about Jimmy and Kayla, who's played hilariously by Megan Stalter. Their dynamic is so weird, but so fun. It's like the best odd couple combo that we can have. How do you keep a straight face working opposite Megan? Especially, like, I am thinking of that plane scene. It was just so good.
Oh, I don't. Yeah, both of us break a lot. I think we probably... No, that's not true. The most breaking that happens on set is when Hannah Einbinder, who plays Ava, is with her mother Nina, played by Jane Addams. They really crack each other up, and everybody up. But yeah, we have to edit around us breaking. We don't really cross cover the show, so we don't shoot both of us at the same time, which a lot of comedies do, which gives us some leeway in that department. But also for a scene like the plane scene, we actually didn't break much. There was very little breaking.
So how is it different, maybe acting opposite someone like Megan versus acting opposite someone like Jean?
Quite different. It's quite different. Well, Meg and I get a kick out of each other and get to, like, you know, make each other laugh, and that's like part of the fun of it, is trying to make the other person break. And Jean is somebody who there isn't really a lot of ad-libbing. You know, she's somebody who not only has she done sitcom, but she's also done a lot of theater, and so she is really she really honors the text, and she pretty much stays on the text. But I mean, it's interesting when you're with someone like Jean. She's so fully committed, and so the character. She fully embodies the character so much that it makes your job so easy, because you're like, oh, I'm talking to Deborah Vance, you know, and all the things that you need to feel, you can, because she is just such a fully realized character. And in the hands of Jean, I mean, the one thing that's hard is sometimes not getting distracted by her performance, because she's so good.
I want to see the blooper reel.
I know. I want that.
Why aren't those a thing anymore?
You know, we always want them. It's just, you know, in this day and age, the schedule is like, it's pretty fast, and so there's not a lot of time for editors to cut those, I guess. But I know, I really do. I know. All right, I'm gonna work on this for you. I'm gonna work on it. Okay.
Okay. One of the interesting or fun things for me, at least as a viewer, and you know, looking at social media, is the discussion around shipping, and obviously there's a corner of social media that wants Ava and Deb to kiss already. There's also a corner that wants Jimmy and Kayla. What intrigues you about those discussions in the fandom?
It's so funny when people see that on screen and want that, you know, but it's true. It's not just, I mean, you know, there are like the hardcore shippers like you're talking about, but you know, Cole Escola was a consultant on season 1, and after season 1 aired, they emailed me, well, Jimmy and Kayla have to get married. And I was like, I don't know if that makes sense. But, you know, like, I feel like a lot of people, I think it's also when you see the fun and the chemistry people have, I think a lot of times people are like, well, that's love.
Yeah.
That's love. That's romantic love. That is what it's got to be. And it's really interesting because sometimes I think that's true. And sometimes I think what they're seeing is a connection they haven't seen outside of traditional romantic comedy, you know? And so I think sometimes that's where it comes from. But either way, I do think like the phenomenon of shipping is so fun. I mean, we all do it. We all do it. Yeah, I've done it for characters on TV, you know, so.
Who did you ship?
Oh man, I used to ship the characters in The Killing, which I don't think I was alone. I know that's crazy, but Joel Kinnaman and Marielle Enos, I was like, come on, you guys are in love. I know.
That's the way we went.
Well, I didn't have it prepared. I was like, you know, that's the first thing that came. But anyway.
But what, as a writer, and maybe even as a performer, what do you find interesting about the undertones of those platonic dynamics where, like you said, there's a love there, but it's just not what we think it is?
Yeah, I think the thing as a writer and as a performer, I think it's interesting to see new dynamics that we haven't seen. You know, you've seen, and that's one of the things I think that resonates with people about Hacks is that you've seen comedies that it's a mother-daughter, or you've seen comedies where, you know, I worked on Broad City, where it's like two best friends who are like the same, they are very similar, you know, even though they are also very opposite, they are an odd couple. But I think seeing the kind of love and complex relationship that Ava and Deborah have, and that Jimmy and Kayla have, I think that's one of the reasons people have sparked to the show, is because it feels fresh and feels like something that they haven't seen on screen. And it makes the stories we get to tell also pretty interesting, because we get to approach big topics from very different points of view. And so that was always how we pitched the show, that it was this complicated, dark mentorship and love story between these two people. And I mean Jimmy and Kayla, but also Deborah and Ava.
How has it been, you know, working alongside your wife Lucia and Jen, and what have you sort of learned is important when you're collaborating with others and making sure things don't get icky?
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason I think that people feel the authentic comedy connection that Deborah and Ava have is because it comes from the feelings that Lucia, Jen, and I have for each other. And I think, you know, we've all experienced, and people, whether we've experienced or not, I think there's like famously many comedy teams or collaborators or creative partnerships that don't end well, usually because of some kind of ego thing. And very early on, when we were first making the show, we were like, our relationship is more important than anything else, because the show is our relationship. So that has to stay intact. And I think when it doesn't, and you know, I think I'm sure you could do some investigative journalism and find out that there are a lot of shows that started not to be as good when the creators or the collaborators stopped getting along, stopped sharing that, you know, joy of doing it together. So I think it's like our kindredness that makes it what it is. So we were very much like, we always have to talk if we have an issue. And I think the thing that's great is we just respect each other a lot. And also 3 is helpful because there's a tiebreaker. So there's really never two of us that are really at a stalemate, because one of us will say, well, I kind of think that one maybe, and then it's over. You know what I mean? We move on. And we, you know.
Did you find that you had to give assurance, or not assurance, but let Jen know, just because we're a couple, that doesn't automatically...
Oh, yeah. Well, we didn't have to give her assurance because I think she knows it. What's funny is that I think because we're a couple, in some ways we are more likely to disagree, and then Jen, you know what I mean? And then Jen is the tiebreaker. So, and it's so funny. Sometimes, I mean, they both have the experience of living as women, and so like sometimes they understand something that I have a blind spot for, and they see something that they feel passionately about. And that's the other thing too. We are very much of the mind that if even one of us is really passionate about a joke, about something they find funny, we know someone else will find it funny, you know? And so we also kind of have that veto card. If someone's like, but this has to happen, you know, we always do it. We always shoot it, we always try it. And that's the thing too, our process is we write, obviously, the scripts, and with our writer's room, we write on set, and then we write in the edit. So it's almost like it's so alive and fluid that, I don't know, there's not a lot of like, we can't do that, or we have to do this joke, because there's chance to make it better or cut it out.
Well, the real engine of the show is something that has always fascinated me, which is, you know, what does happen to talent when they've sort of fallen into obscurity or irrelevance. And, you know, Deb is someone who's in her third act and sort of not really ready to or face this idea that maybe she's past her prime. And this season really showed, you know, what happens when she's achieved all that she was sort of hungry for. And, you know, she got this holy grail thing, which was the late night gig. Yeah. What, as a writer, but also as a performer, did that sort of help crystallize for you in terms of the trappings of fame and how easy it is to sort of crave this stuff and how to keep yourself in check?
You know, I think that's one of the lessons of that finale is, in the finale, it is her ego and her fear, something that's like holding on so tightly to this holy grail that makes her betray her closest relationship and her creative partnership. So it's interesting because it is sort of like, in some ways, the show is very much, it's a wish, and it's about never having a final act and being able to evolve and being able to get better and continue to grow, and about how if you're someone like Deborah and you're knocked down 1,000 times, if you get up 1,001, you can do anything. So in some ways it is very much, I hope, very aspirational in that way, but it also is a cautionary tale that even in doing that, it can't be the only thing or the thing that you're willing to sacrifice other people for, you know?
Because is how far Paul is willing to go different from how far Deborah's willing to go?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. I think people like Deborah getting to be like as famous as Deborah is and getting to reach that level. And I mean, there are certainly people who have gotten there because of their God-given talent, and they're just great, and they're lucky, and they somehow stay grounded. I think there are very few. I think a lot of them have to have something that makes them so ambitious that, I don't know, it makes them, it's crazy making their ambition and what they're reaching for. And I don't think that I could betray the people in my life for something like that, even though I am ambitious. I'm very ambitious. But I also recognize how lucky I am too, you know.
If late night is Deb's holy grail, what's Paul's holy grail? What's the dream you're chasing still?
Wow, that is such a great question. Because
I'm available for the show.
I know. Well, hey, be careful what you promise. Okay. Okay. Sign a release, please. I think it's hard to say because as cheesy as it sounds, in some ways I'm like, I am living my dream. I really, really am. I get to make comedy that people respond to, and I get to do it with the people I love. It sounds so cheesy. I'm like, edit it out. But
Kayla's rolling her eyes.
I mean, Kayla's like, Jimmy, be a killer. Say something. Say you want to host the Oscars, you know? And that used to be my dream. As a kid, I wanted to host the Oscars. I actually did. You know, I would like, but I want to continue doing what I'm doing and hopefully do it even more. And, you know, I think I've always written for other people to be the lead. And I've been very comfortable doing that because even though I am an actor and I love performing and I want to do that, it's been very rewarding for me to be in a support role. But hey, I would love to be the lead of something. And, you know, if I can keep making people laugh and keep doing comedy, then I'll still feel really lucky.
Well, I want to talk about that final moment from the finale, which was just stunning to watch, the scene between Deb and Ava. And it was sort of foreshadowed at the top of the season. It opens with the back of Deb and, you know, this Caesar statue in Vegas, foreshadowing this backstabbing. How soon did you know where you were heading with this season?
Well, we had pitched the whole series when we pitched the show, and we knew where we wanted the final scene in the final episode to happen. And in this season, we knew that it was, you know, season 3 was going to be the quest to get this chair and to host late night. And we always knew that Deborah and Ava would work together on that it would become their shared dream. But it wasn't until, honestly, the first week of the writer's room that we said, Ava takes it. And that was it was such a great moment to say that and have everyone in the writer's room be like, yeah, that's right. That feels really right. Because we want Ava to evolve and step into her power. And we want them to be together. And what it lets us do is this thing we try and do, which is kind of blow up the show at every season, but also reset the dynamic. Because that dynamic, the conflict, the friction is part of the comedy. And so you need that. You can't just have it be totally harmonious, you know? So it was an exciting way for us to, like, we thought, handcuff them together and give us real stakes for season 4, because it would be so juicy. And also, as hard as it was for Deborah to get that job, it is way harder to launch a late night show and make it successful and keep it on the air. So season 3 was only one step. You know, season 4 is even more her biggest challenge yet.
You need to get Conan on to give her some advice.
I know.
That's the way you got it.
I know. We are such Conan fans, and he has been really nice about the show. So yeah, I know.
Do you think Deb is proud of, in some form of her, is proud of Ava for that?
Oh yeah. And that was something it's in the script that, you know, something flashes in Deborah's eyes. It's anger, yes, but it's also pride, and it's also excitement, because it's the same as the pilot. When they met and this girl called her a hack and spoke truth to her and went toe-to-toe with her and was funny, she was like, oh, good. A worthy opponent. This is fun, because Deborah loves to spar. You know, I think it's like part of comedy love language is ribbing each other and sparring. And she, you know, you don't want to play tennis with someone who can't play. You want to play a good match. And so I think what we see in the last moment of season 3 is her saying it's on.
What was Jean's reaction to reading that?
I mean, it's so funny because they read it right before the table read, and I think she just texted a million emojis, you know? She was like, whoa! And then she's so funny because when she first saw Ava, or Hannah, at the table read, she was like, well. You know, it's really like, it's funny how dropped into the characters they are and how embodied they are, because I think she was like Deborah. She was like, I can't believe she would do this, and I'm excited, you know?
Tell me where you're at in the process of season 4 before we wrap. Like, and do you 3 have a routine before you start a season?
Yes, we do a period of time we call the blue sky, where we just talk really big picture. You know, we do like a 30,000 foot view of the season, of all the things that could happen. Sometimes on Fridays we say it's Flight of Fancy Friday, and we just like have flights of fancy. And then sometimes we do that before we actually begin the writer's room. So we have time for that sort of to gestate and just to think about it. Because a lot of the times when we're having fun together and we're not working, it is when like some of the best stuff comes. So we kind of let that simmer in the back of our mind. And then we get together with our writers and talk about, you know, what the season will be. And we are right now about halfway through the writer's room of season 4. So I was Zooming with the room on the way here.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because it's a time where you feel like, great, we got like half done. But also as you figure out things, it's such a house of cards, it changes things, you know, so it's also intense.
Is there something you can tell us, tease us with, that won't make sense now, but will when it returns?
Because I can tell you some things that will make total sense. We pick up very shortly after that last moment. So I can tell you that.
No year time jump.
No year time jump. We're talking 35-minute time jump.
Okay.
But something that won't make sense. I'm trying to think of like words I can say. I can say dance.
Okay.
I can say dance. I can say cocaine. I can say bitch. I mean, you know, and I can say Lassie reboot. Okay, that's all I can say. And that was probably too much.
Okay.
Cut that up too. No, whatever, it's fine.
Before I let you go, though, I have to know, what's it like playing pickleball with Helen Hunt as she's hurling slurs at you?
Oscar worthy. It is Oscar worthy. She was so funny because she is a pickleball player, and both Meg and I had to take lessons. And on our first lesson, Meg showed up in Crocs, and the coach was like, that might be dangerous. You might like roll an ankle, so like sneakers next time. The next lesson, she came in Crocs. So we didn't really perfect our game, but God, it was fun to be abused by Helen Hunt. It was really fun.
And that line where you tell her to Google how to play it, like, I know it's so simple, but it had me cackling for minutes.
Thank you.
It's so good.
That
so
is
good.
so nice.
Yeah.
That's so nice.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. It was a pleasure. Can't wait for season 4.
Thanks for the gotcha questions.
Yeah, gotcha.
That was good. You got
You
me?
didn't cry, though.
Am I supposed to? I took a deep breath at one point.
My colleague made his last guest cry.
Really?
Yeah.
Damn. I was getting emotional when you were talking about Jen Lucci, and I do have to take deep breaths sometimes to not, you know. Yeah.
And that'll do it for another episode of The Envelope. Please join us next week for a drama-focused episode with 2 new interviews. And please like, share, and subscribe wherever you watch or listen to your podcasts.